This live broadcast is brought to you by KWUA Communications, the official broadband partner of Klamath Falls News.
Why don't we just go in the order? I'll do here, Ben here, Gene and you, and okay. Well, you go down one more. Let Bryce sit by Gene, and then you're there. Okay. No, that's fine. Yeah, need one more chair. You want to introduce it? I'm going to introduce who's up here.
Oh, I can?
Yeah, I would.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for attending. My name is Ben DuVal. I'm the Klamath Water Users President. And I appreciate y'all coming here this morning, even though it's not under good circumstances. We all know that we've been struggling to maintain a viable project under the latest biological opinion that leaves the Klamath Project and the refuges chasing ever smaller pieces of the pie, while at the same time sending unnatural amounts of water down the river. And it holds Upper Klamath Lake higher and higher, despite it showing no improvement for the fish. So we're in a tough spot this year, and we all know that. Before we get started, there's a couple people I'd like to thank for attending here. Aaron Ryan with Congressman LaMalfa's office, Jerry Byrne, Modoc County Supervisor, Ned Coe, Modoc County Supervisor, Brandon Chris, Siskiyou County Supervisor, Michael Cobseth, Siskiyou County Supervisor, April Snell with OWRC, and unfortunately the Klamath County Commissioners couldn't make it because they have a budget hearing today. So the simple fact is it just hasn't rained or snowed this year. Not only this winter, but the last couple of years. The inflows to Upper Klamath Lake just haven't shown up. We all know how dry our fields are, and the rest of the watershed's in the same boat. Our biggest fear with this biological opinion was a year like this. And ordinarily, the Bureau of Reclamation makes a public announcement stating the allocation, but they were unavailable today. So there's no easy way to say this, and no one came here to listen to me talk. So what we know today, as of this morning, is the allocation from Upper Klamath Lake will be 33,000 acre feet. We all know that's barely enough to charge some ditches. That's actually less than we got in 2001. And that would be starting June 1st, maybe able to start charging some canals sooner than that. Starting May 15th, but basically no deliveries until June 1st. We all know what this is going to mean to our farms, our families, and our community as a whole. For some of us, it may mean we're not in business next year. And the ESA, unfortunately, doesn't take into account paying a mortgage or providing for your family. But I'd like to say that we're all in this together. In places, there'll probably be just enough water to fight over. And we all know that there's going to be struggles even amongst ourselves. But my hope is that we can all stick together and look to help each other where we can. It's always impressed me the way that this community acts in the face of adversity. and that's something that we can be proud of. My biggest fear is radical outsiders coming in and taking what we do here and using our crisis as a soapbox for them. And that's why I think it's important that we maintain a sense of community this year. The only way we're going to get through this and improve the situation long term is by sticking together, by acting in a unified and dignified manner, and making sure it's the people of this community, the people that are suffering, whose voices are heard. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul Simmons. He's got a few things to say, and then we're going to have each district supervisor or manager talk about how they can manage what little water there is within their each individual districts. Also, Chelsea in the back just got some of the operations plan printed up, so if anybody wants to snag one of those on the way out, we'll do that. Thank you.
So, good morning. I'm Paul Simmons, the Executive Director of Klamath Water Users Association. All I can say is that all of the people that work for you are acutely aware that we get paychecks and you don't. And it's hard to know that and hard to deal with a year like this year. I want to fill in on a couple of additional details on top of what Ben said with respect to the water. There's sort of two parts of it for Upper Klamath Lake water. Under the operations plan, the biological opinions, based on the hydrologic conditions on April 1st, there's a calculated project supply, water from Upper Klamath Lake. That's 32,000 acre feet this year. That's just a mathematical exercise, for better or worse. There is a potential and a likelihood of some additional Upper Klamath Lake supply based on this. The agencies are going to allow Upper Klamath Lake to be taken to an elevation of 4138.3 at the end of September. As we sit here today, if we only took 32,000 acre feet, we would be substantially above that elevation. So there is, and I don't get real excited, but there's an expectation that there'll be some additional quantity of water over and above the 32. That water, the risk is on us about that water, because 4138.3 is a hard floor, and so your managers working with reclamation are going to have to follow what's happening day by day by day and coordinate with you all to understand what they can do to be able to take that additional water and not hit that hard floor at 4138.3 on the lake. So I'm going to let some people who know this stuff speak to what quantity that might be, but in the best of circumstances, we're still at either the worst or the second worst water delivery year in the history of the Klamath Project. And Ben did mention the start date. The expectation is that districts will be able to start charging canals on May 15th, and that some deliveries would be able to start on June 1st. There's some variations and things that could affect that, but that's the current expectation as far as how this plan will work. The plan itself just came out about 45 minutes ago. We got a copy. We got a briefing from Reclamation this morning at 8 o'clock, and we typed up some just bullet point summary. Chelsea's passing them out of what Ben just said. So that's that I think is pretty close to the bullet points, but we'll read the details. Don't take this to the bank. Well, I can't take any of this to the bank, but don't assume this is right. It could be different, but I believe it's pretty accurate. Another thing that I want to make sure to cover is, so I don't think this plan that's being handed out deals with Clear Lake and Gerber reservoirs. What we heard was that expected delivery is between 20 and 24,000 acre feet out of those two. There is going to be some amount in the plan of delivery to Lower Klamath National Wildlife Refuge out of a currently approved transfer that they have from the Barnes Agency ranches. There won't be a huge amount of water, but I believe they're planning to have that water delivered. I mean, one other thing I just want to say about the Bureau, I mean, there, you know, a lot of people, your managers and boards and I are in contact with them all of the time. And so I just want you to understand, I think it's important to understand, you know, Jared Botcher is our acting area manager. I do not believe it's his decision that he's not here, or people from the regional office that he's not here. And you can do whatever you want with that. But that, I believe that to be the truth. And I know, I mean, they have to deal with agencies and other interests that are a tough row to hoe. And they've done what they can, especially with this little block of additional water, I think, in the last week, for better or worse. I'm not, I don't want to oversell it, but, and up to Washington. And, you know, the woman who's going to be the commissioner of reclamation is a good water person, and very, very accessible to us, and I think you should look on that positively. You may have read that Senators Merkley and Wyden and Congressman Bentz had a meeting with the Secretary yesterday, and from all accounts that I have heard, that was a positive meeting. It wasn't about politics, it was about trying to do what can be done with this catastrophe. So we're going to work with whoever we can, as best we can, to get through the year and make this better. There's a question about Drought Response Agency funding. Right now, Reclamation is able to commit $15 million to the DRA. And so I think it's important to appreciate, with respect to that money, you know, all dollars are appropriated by Congress for a purpose. And in this case, the dollars we're talking about were appropriated at the end of last year. There were no dollars specifically designated in that appropriation for the Drought Response Agency. The commissioner, the then commissioner, allocated some dollars, just kind of loose dollars, to the Klamath Basin Area Office, $10 million, that could be used for DRA. It's not obligatory to use it for DRA, but could be. And for all practical purposes, the 100%, you know, 100 cents on the dollar of that $10 million is going to go to the DRA. And they found another $5 million in the region. And you know, you're talking about agencies fighting for their own budgets when they do this. So there was work done to bring that number up. The thing to also know is that we all understand, and they understand, is that's not nearly enough to deal with the situation we've got. And so they and we are still focused on that. We have had discussions with the Department of Agriculture, the policy people, and the Secretary's office, and we're making a push for Commodity Credit Corporation funding that they could use under their general authorities and some legislation that's specific to the Klamath Project. And one of the handouts there is a couple of papers that we provided to folks in USDA about our position, our view, and I think it's actually correct, that there is authorization for the Commodity Credit Corporation to make money available to Interior for DRA. And we're hoping that we can convert that from a legal question to a policy question. And I'm confident that there's all kinds of policy encouragement being given to Secretary Vilsack to make it happen if it is indeed a policy decision. A few other things to talk about related to what might change any of this that I'm describing for you. And there is the handout on the CCC money, yeah? Okay. And we actually have a meeting at tomorrow morning early with the people in DC on that. And it won't be overnight. If we get good news, it won't be overnight, and I'm not promising anything. So there are things that could change everything we've talked about so far. The weather could do that in various ways, and others are better able to speak to that. There is litigation all over the place right now, and I just want to talk about four things that could have some effect on all of this. You're familiar with Klamath Irrigation District's lawsuit against the Water Resources Department, where they've obtained a series of favorable rulings to order Water Resources Department to. Oh, I'm sorry. The Klamath Irrigation District lawsuits against the Water Resources Department. they've obtained a series of favorable rulings that require the Water Resources Department to require the Bureau of Reclamation to not release stored water for in-stream flows in the Klamath River. About 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, the Water Resources Department issued such an order to the Bureau of Reclamation, but it unfortunately had a hole in it, so to speak, and said, well, this isn't intended to trump any obligations you have under federal law. And so there's no indications right now that the Bureau of Reclamation is going to change what it's doing. There is another piece of litigation. Klamath Irrigation District sought a preliminary injunction against the Bureau of Reclamation over here in Klamath County Circuit Court for the same purpose, to curtail stored water releases to the river. That case was removed under a procedure that exists in federal law. The government removed that case to federal court, and there's a briefing schedule and a hearing currently scheduled for April 28th in front of Judge Aiken in that particular case. My personal view about that is to hope for the best, but I think it's prudent to plan for the worst, because we just, that's just what I would simply say. There's another piece of litigation that happened yesterday. Klamath tribes sued the Bureau of Reclamation. They claim that, well, the upper Klamath Lake is supposed to be held above elevation 4142 through the end of the month of May under biological opinions and what have you. They gave notice, I guess, 61 days ago that this wasn't happening and they were going to sue if it wasn't. So yesterday they filed a lawsuit. It's in the District of Oregon, and asking that the lake be, kept up. They also, from what I understand, asked for a temporary restraining order, which means they want to have instant relief from the court right now to sort of preserve things until the court decides later on the total legitimacy of the case. So, as I understand, they are on an immediate basis asking that the court order that Iron Gate releases be reduced to like 400, no, not Iron Gate, Link River Dam releases be reduced to 400 CFS, which would translate into Iron Gate of something like 650 CFS. So as it came out of the press release, I haven't seen anything else, the Klamath tribes are asking the court to require Bureau of Reclamation to let less water down the river, because we're not taking any, so that the lake can stay relatively more full. There's a time when that case would become very relevant to irrigation diversions, whenever it is we're able to start. So it's going to be a complicated procedural muddle on that front. But I mean, as to I guess I would say, as to everything that we've discussed so far, probably the worst case scenario for that lawsuit for us is no diversion until June 1, canal charging. But by no means am I saying that's going to happen. That feels like the worst case to me that could come out of this immediate case. And then, let me see, there's one more. So there's another lawsuit that's been around for a couple of years in San Francisco, in the Northern District of California, a federal court. That was filed by the Yurok tribe in 2019. It is currently stayed, meaning there's no activity going on in it. But here's what's going to happen in that case in the near future. There are a few really, really important legal issues that a lot of us have been trying to elevate and bring attention to for the last few years that relate to how the project is regulated under the ESA, and this fundamental question of stored water and what can it be used for. And you can probably go back in the annals of the Klamath Water Users until whenever all this started, and see letters about stored water. But we have sought to litigate those issues, as have other districts, by filing a lawsuit saying, actually, under contemporary understandings of the ESA, you don't have the authority to curtail our deliveries, Bureau of Reclamation. And you don't have any obligation under federal law to send stored water down the river, even though you say you do. So that we've attempted to raise those in litigation that we filed, various districts, and we were not allowed to pursue that lawsuit in federal court. There's a doctrine in federal courts, it's called like indispensable parties, and the argument was made successfully by two tribes that they are indispensable parties to that case, and the case can't go forward unless they are joined in the case as a defendant. And because they cannot be joined because they have sovereign immunity as tribes, therefore the case can't go forward at all. That argument was successful, and the cases were dismissed. They're now on appeal. So we're in a strange place of being unable to raise those issues. Meanwhile, as I think you know, we were able to get the attention of the previous administration, and we got their engagement on those issues and obtained favorable opinions from the solicitor's office related to those exact issues, what I'll call the discretion issue and the stored water issue. Had those analyses been carried forward, there would be a different approach that would be being taken. This year would still be a mess and confusing, but there would be a different approach going forward. Those memos and analyses were withdrawn last week by the secretary, and my view on that is what happened. And I wish it hadn't. That is what happened. And those are the cards that we are dealt, and those cards we will play. So we intend in Klamath Water Users, which is an intervener in the San Francisco lawsuit, we will be filing a motion to lift the stay on that lawsuit to get adjudication of the discretion issue, the stored water issue, because I think procedurally we can do that in a defensive posture, and hope that the stay is lifted and those issues can get litigated. That has no prospects of doing us anything this year, I'm sorry to say. I don't anticipate a decision the way things will work out until late summer at the earliest in that approach. So that's not a solve a today problem, that's to solve a structural fundamental problem and hopefully turn things around in a way they might have been turned around under the previous memos that were withdrawn. There are some other favorable things that still advancing in terms of the Bureau of Reclamation Science Initiative and what have you that I do believe will be useful, not this year, but as we go. I think that's what I wanted to cover. Each of the district managers is going to speak a little bit. What you heard today in terms of the information about the plan this is not something that they've known very long. So I think they'll probably be speaking to what they can tell you about their process and their process with their boards and decision making and their thoughts. And I've asked that one of them try to help put some boundaries on what is this additional increment of water, how much, in addition to 32, what might we really expect it to be? We won't know the answer to that question until September 30th, how much that additional amount of water is. Every single day, you'll have a slightly better estimate of what that additional water would be, and that's what these guys do. That's what they do. So with that, I'm going to let Gene speak about KID.
Thank you, Paul. So, to put in perspective, the Klamath Project on a dry year needs about 450,000 acre feet of water or more, sometimes up to 510,000 acre feet in a very dry year to get everything wet and to make it through the year. 33,000 acre feet is about 8% of what we need. As we look at what water rights are and how we can make 33,000 acre feet go as far as possible, we have to look at what is a law, who has authority or who has priority, and how we make that work. As we all know, Van Bremer has a senior water right to most folks here in the project, and KID has a responsibility that whatever Van Bremer demands of reclamation and reclamation tells KID to do, we have a contractual responsibility to meet that obligation by our contract. That's KA 1001. KA 1004 is a Henley-Ankeny right within KID. It is senior to most other water rights here in the project under the KA 1000. We have a significant number of acres that are covered under that KA 1004 water right. And as water is available, we will make that 49 CFS available. What I would say to KID patrons is that once we open up the A Canal headworks, it's going to be a little bit before deliveries are made. This system is dry. It is not prepared to take on a large storage or a large amount of pressure and water in the canal system today. We normally take 2 to 3 weeks to charge our system to get everything wet so that we don't have canal breaks, so we don't have emergency situations. So when we open up the A Canal headworks, that water that's initially coming in through A Canal and through Miller Hill and through other systems is going to take a little while to get that system wet and get it charged and get it ready. So don't anticipate immediate deliveries. I'd also say to KID patrons, what we heard this morning is that reclamation is going to limit how fast we can take that 33,000 acre feet. That's going to be work between KID, TID, and KDD as we sit down and we discuss what operations plans are and what we can actually make work with what little reclamation will allow us to take out of a lake at a particular time. By law, KID will have to take responsibility for providing those deliveries on what our system will allow. Our system has a minimum rate of which I can actually take water through the system and actually put it to beneficial use. Although we have a system, the project is 92 to 96% efficient. That's as a project. Klamath Irrigation District is closer to 62 to 63% efficient, where a number of our drain water goes to other districts or becomes available for recirculation. So as we look at what's available, and we look at timing, and we look what is out there, don't anticipate what we have to last very long, and don't anticipate very much of it to be coming at multiple or at a instant rate where everybody can turn on at the same time. And we will work through what we can to make sure that we can make it last for the period that is available to us. And I think I'll turn it over to Scott.
Thanks, Gene. Was like deja vu all over again. I didn't like it before and I don't like it now. I'm not really quite sure what to say to everybody up here. Personally, my heart is bleeding for this community, for all of you. It's bleeding for the businesses that this impacts as well. I'm once again losing sleep over all this stuff. So I can only imagine what you all are dealing with today. Well, let me just get into KDD stuff. Maybe they focus a little bit better there. So thus far, KDD we've been impacted to the sense of typically we take about 22 to 25,000 acre feet during the fall winter period. This last fall winter we only took 9,000 acre feet because that's what we were limited to under the biological opinion. We have a pretty incredible recirculation program down on KDD. We've got 2 separate recirculation pumping plants off of our township drain. We also have the ability to utilize other drainage and get that to our recirculation plants as well. Last year was the first time in history where FF pumping plant, which is the plant that pumps water out to the Klamath River, was pumped less than EE pumping plant, which is one that's located in the center of the district to lift water. First time in history. So we have really, really ramped up our recirculation program. We recognize on KDD that what we do impacts everybody else, and my board has made it a point to work with all the other districts the best that we can to try and help the situation, and today is no different. I think that I can safely say that my board is committed to working with all the other districts on a year like this as well. That being said, any drop that we take this year, we're going to continue to use as responsibly as possible. I don't know what that means on a year like this. We're not ready. We have not made any operational decisions. My board hasn't. So I can't tell you today what KDD is planning to do, when they're planning to do it. But I suspect that, I'll probably be getting together with Brad and Gene maybe as early as this afternoon or tomorrow to start talking about what we're going to do with the information we just received today. On that note, I'm not quite sure what else to say, so I'm just going to hand it over to Brad.
Well, I'm not really sure what to say either. Last year we were faced with an impossible task. Somehow we were able to make some magic happen and get most everybody through. It wasn't everything. We had a lot of dry acres, a lot of people go without water. That was with ending up with 155,000 acre feet out of Upper Klamath Lake. Looking at 33, and Paul asked to kind of put a range of what he described as the additional water that may be available down to 4138.3 current projections as of right now. And this is the thing, is as Paul said, the risk is on us in this. So whatever we plan for, know full well that it could be more, it could be less. And with the hydrology, this unprecedented hydrology, it's unbelievable this year. Inflows to Upper Klamath Lake, inflows to all the reservoirs, even down on the bottom end in Tulelake, or in the Tulelake sumps. It doesn't make any sense. But the range right now, or the projected possible amount of water, is about 70,000 acre feet. Again, the unprecedented hydrology that we're seeing right now, unless we see some, we've had miracle storms in the past. There's not one big enough to make enough of a difference this year. But if we do see some storms, that number could get bigger. More than likely, if the current hydrology persists, last year we didn't get one storm throughout the entire summer. And if that happens again this year, more than likely that 70 is going to be a maximum, and it could possibly be less.
That's grand total.
And that's grant.
32 plus.
Yeah, that's grand total. It's not 30. Yeah, 30. Well, it's 33. 33 plus a volume to get to a total of 70,000 acre feet, basically projected right at the moment. Well, with that, I'll step into a little bit, as the other managers did, to what TID's doing. As of Monday, we did turn wells on, the district wells. So we're trying to do what we can with 0 diversions from Station 48. Under the biological opinion, there is Lost River water from the Lost River side that goes into the diversion channel is available to project districts, and that does not count against Upper Klamath Lake diversions. As of Sunday, really as of Friday afternoon, the little bit of water that was there, it was about 35 CFS, dropped down to about 10, and then so I shut Station 48 down to about 10, and then similarly on Sunday it went down to 0. So Station 48, our diversion off of the Lost River diversion channel, is currently shut off. So we're not taking any surface water either from Upper Klamath Lake or the Lost River system. We are solely running our district and our main canals and laterals that we have wells on, the TID wells on, solely by those wells. We cannot serve the vast majority of our district with the TID wells. It's very limited. It depends on where your fields are located, whether or not we're physically able to get water to you at this moment in time. Looking at Well, as it was stated, May 15th or June 1, that's basically what we're looking at operating under at least until that time. And even at that time, the amount of water that we're talking about after we, as we talked about, we'll get together, look at what the pot of water is, try to figure out an operations plan that will, as a whole, diversions and what have you, to get to a certain point, to get whatever crops are out there, to hopefully get to a point where you guys can actually harvest them and not lose them. And then from that, we'll take the next step and figure out how that water is divvied up and how much each of our districts will have to work with. And it is very, very minimal at that point. I don't know if I have anything more to say, if that's it. All right.
Is the DRA next? What's that? Is the DRA next or the groundwater? Well, I think the agenda may say that the report from the Drought Response Agency, probably what I told you is, oh, hey, Mark, you're hiding out. Well, and Mark's going to, okay, here he comes. I think he may be coming to turn in his resignation, but, and then Mark will go after. Oh, Shasta View, I'm sorry, John. Yeah, sorry.
Just a quick update from Shasta View and Malin Irrigation. Our boards will be having a board meeting tomorrow afternoon at 4:30 in the Malin Park, and a patrons meeting will follow directly after that at 6 p.m. So please attend and we can let you know what we do know as of right now. Thank you.
I'm Mark Staunton, the chair of the Drought Response Agency. I think what I have, or what I can report on today, would be the news that Paul already gave about the $15 million. I think it's very important that we all recognize where we were about a month ago, and that number was, we could already start to picture a scenario of this extreme shortage, and we were facing a number that was far lower than that coming out of the Bureau of Reclamation. It was only because of the organization of Water Users Association that we have any funding at all, and then that number is at $15 million right now. So I think it's extremely important that we give credit where credit is due, that any money coming into this project is because of Klamath Water Users Association. So with that being said, the Drought Response Agency, I guess, has one glimmer of bright spot that we haven't, or that is going to be different than in previous years, and that is under the authority that we were tasked in the previous drought response programs, meant we had to provide beneficial credit to the Fish and Wildlife Service in order to receive that funding. The Klamath Water Users Association, our director, worked extremely hard in the last administration to push through legislation that corrected that authorization so that now that isn't part of our task. That's very important for money on the ground, because as soon as we perform the grant process, which is much more streamlined, that money can be in our account and pushed out to you individuals in a much more timely manner. So instead of this game of we can't say how much money we have, we can't say, we'll be able to respond much earlier in the season to those needs. So I think that is a bit of good news. Our plan is tomorrow we'll be reviewing our draft policies and procedures for this year's program. We hope after our board meeting tomorrow that we'll be pushing those programs out to the community in the form of applications. And those application period will be open for probably a longer period of time than in historical programs, because we know that the amount of impact is far greater this year. I think at this time, the Drought Response Agency will be focusing most all of our efforts on dry land acres. It's very obvious that we cannot fill the shortfall of surface water with a combination of demand management programs like we've done in the past. So we feel it necessary to focus our efforts on the acres that will be dry this year. If there's additional funding, we'll probably be looking at other options of groundwater reimbursement and other programs, but I think it is important to know that we are being focusing on the dry land portion right now. So with that being said,
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Johnson, the Deputy Director of the Klamath Water Users Association. I'm going to be giving a short talk on the current status of the groundwater rules in the basin. OWRD was unable to attend the meeting today, so I'm going to relay some updates for the 2021 program. We recently learned earlier this week that well, let me back up. Here, a couple weeks ago, Governor Brown declared a drought in Klamath County, as many of you know. So that opened up the door for the state to allow some flexibility and start taking applications for emergency groundwater pumping. And with that said, under the previous emergency drought permits, the duty was limited to 1 acre foot per acre. And due to the conditions, the dire conditions we're facing this year, the state agreed to up that duty to 2.5 acre feet per acre. So that'll really help out the districts. And also, and I have 3 documents over on the table there. One of them is the email from Director Byler outlining the change in the duty, and also a letter that many of you have received if you had applied for or granted emergency drought permits in previous years. And that letter regards 3 changes this year when you are applying for permits, which one is you have to have a flow meter installed, which apparently 99% of them already have one, so that's not an issue. But field staff will also come out and take static groundwater levels prior to pumping. And 3, they need an updated map of the well location. And that's all that is outlined in the letter up over on the table as well. But other than that, it's going to be an extremely tough year, and we're going to do what we can do, I guess, and it's hard to explain it any further. So, all right, thank you.
So I just want to fill in one more thing about the drought well permits. I mean, I think it is important to realize that OWRD showed some flexibility here, and so we're grateful that to the director. I don't know who benefits from that. And I'm not out there on the ground with you all, but I know that's 2.5 is better than 1 is all that I know. And so we do owe them a debt of gratitude for digging deep and figuring out a way to do it. I'm pretty confident that Representative Bentz helped encourage them to find that flexibility this year, so we're grateful to him too. And I also want to say, with respect to the funding issues and what have you, and the efforts with USDA, which we'll keep you posted on, we absolutely understand that people want to irrigate and farm, and the funding is almost like a necessary evil or something under the circumstances, but it darn sure is necessary right now, and we're going to do what we can this year with those circumstances. Okay, all I can say further is I know you all work with your districts, and call us anytime, call me anytime, stop me in the store anytime, and I'll tell you as much as I know, and what we're doing. Come to our meetings if you can. You'd be really welcome, and we'll keep going. All right.
Questions?
No questions.
I know there's been a short period of time, and there's not really much good news. But has anybody got any questions for anyone up here?
How are we supposed to pay a $14,000 water bill and then pay a $10,000 to $12,000 power bill? We don't make that much.
Yeah, the question was, how do we pay a water bill and power bill? And I don't know. I'm wondering how I pay my.
We don't even qualify for the water well program to pay our power bill now.
Right.
So we're screwed.
Yep.
Sell everything and move out of Oregon, I guess.
I'm trying to figure out how to pay my mortgage. So.
We got a mortgage too.
Yep. And everybody in this room's in the same boat, and it doesn't make any sense that people that provide for this nation, employ people, put people to work. We generate wealth here when we have water, but apparently feeding America is not that important anymore, and it's a sad time. And I really wish there was some better news. We've worked tirelessly trying to improve this situation, but the tools that we have to work with are pretty few and far between. Any other questions? The question was, is the Drought Response Agency meeting open to the public? Yeah, it's a public agency, so yes, it is. Where and when? 2 o'clock at the Water Users Office.
We can post the Zoom on our website.
Okay.
2 o'clock there, but you can also go to the Drought Response Agency website, find their agenda, the link to the Zoom meeting is there.
So it's available online if you go to the Drought Response Agency's website. Anything else? Go ahead. The question was, don't some of these agencies have a right to in-stream flow? And the answer is yes. I'm not an attorney, but every person that irrigates in the Klamath Project has a water right to their land. I purchased my grandfather's farm, and with his homestead came a signed water right from the President of the United States at the time. And there's a lot of those out here. But apparently our water rights are being directed elsewhere, not to the people that own them. What's that? Oh, go ahead, John. I'm gonna let Paul answer that.
John's question, if you didn't hear it, was how do we get from the water availability that we would have expected under an implemented KBRA to where we are today. And I can't completely explain that, but this is my best effort. And so I know there's lots of opinions about it, and I know there's lots of opinions about what you would get under an implemented KBRA. I know the mechanics pretty good, and because it triggers off the March 1st 50% exceedance forecast for the KBRA, I think it would have been looking at $330,000 for the project under an implemented KBRA. Now, and no tribal calls and what have you. So how do we get from there to here? If you read that, what this Endangered Species Act reassessment, which was done in January, based on the new solicitor's opinions, it's an excellent explanation of how things deteriorated. Because in essence, you started with a settlement structure where everybody said, well, I'm going to set aside my legal arguments. I'm going to set aside my scientific arguments. He said, I can live with that. And there wasn't, no one would pretend that was strictly in accordance with law. Everyone agreed, or science. So you start with that. And ever since then, that was the structure of the 2013 buyout. And then we got the injunction in 2017, and that like slapped a new gear into this strangely working machine that didn't fit. And then the 2019 biops, yet another strangely thing. And then there was the mistake in the data in the 2019 biops, and then the interim plan. So it's just a Frankenstein of degrading logic is what I would call. So I can't explain that, John. The bottom line is a bunch more water going down the river than would have gone down under the KBRA this year. Bunch more being held in Klamath Lake. And no one, I can't explain it any better than that. It's just, that's the reality.
I got one more thing, Paul. And it's kind of a side note, but we're getting ready to build a $10 million office out of the Bureau of Reclamation to go along with the $10 million office being built by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. In the infinite wisdom of the Bureau of Reclamation, they have created a situation where $1.2 million of that cost is directly allocated to the project irrigators as a reimbursable expense. I don't think at the end of the day we're going to need a Klamath area office. There has been no investigation as to the ability to pay. We've gone through two separate investigations of the ability to pay regarding Clear Lake Dam, and both came back at zero. So how can we pay $1.2 million for that office without any investigation on their part as to our ability to pay?
Well, do you want, I'll tell you what I believe their answer would be, John, just so they would say that the ability to pay comes into play when you're talking about financing construction and signing a contract for financing of construction or rehabilitation, and they're charging this against ongoing O&M where they don't have to do that kind of exercise. And they would say, well, you don't know it right now, but if they get a leaky roof at the area office right now, you're paying somebody to put this, part of what you're paying for in reserve works O&M is to repair that roof. I don't know how that breaks out entirely, and I know people feel strongly about it, and I always tell them, you build a new house when you're successful, and so we need to succeed here. But that's how it would break out, probably legally, for lack of a better word. But I know it's a sore spot that this is a time when a new office is going to be built, and you all are going to be charged for it when you're not going to have any water. So I don't know when that's going to start. The payments, I think they'll be open to negotiation about exactly how any payments may be made and how much. I don't think those will kick in until, from what I understand, it's the year after the construction is complete. I don't know if it's the calendar year, the fiscal year, irrigation year, but the year after the new structure is complete. Which, I mean, for those who don't know it, they're going to build a new building. It's pretty much, from what we understand, a certainty. It'll be sort of where it is now, but west to the west in terms of the actual structure, and maybe a little southish. But I don't know now when that's going to start. Right. Right. Well, so the current default assumption is that paying for the new building will be based on the percentage your district share of total reserved works O&M. So if I'm a district that pays a lot of reserve works O&M relative to my acres, KDD, I think KDD pays something like 40-some% these days of the reserve works O&M. And maybe they'll get some adjustment on, I don't know. But so you say, well, they serve the whole project. And Van Bremer, I don't think Van Bremer has to pay reserve works O&M. Speaking of Van Bremer and their own 1883 water right, best water right and best contract in the Klamath Project, Van Bremer, their curse for them, like all of us, is that water's diverted through federal facilities. But I don't think Van Bremer has to pay reserve works O&M, do they? No. So, yeah, so Van Bremer wouldn't be charged, and probably won't be under any circumstances, because there's just no way to levy an O&M charge on them. I have heard at water users board meetings, other districts say that they're open to try to figure out what's equitable as among the districts to allocate that O&M, and that's something I would really defer to the districts on. But there's a logic for why they're doing it the way they are, but I don't think the Bureau would be hostile to an alternative proposal. It feels more equitable to everybody involved. I want to just talk, as long as we're talking about O&M and you pay your assessments and your power bills, whether you get water or not, it's something we brought up with the federal government this morning. As it turns out, in 2001, there was legislation passed for the United States, who actually, is responsible for the ESA, the United States, to reimburse the O&M paid by district patrons, because I called it the Nothing for Something Act. You paid something and got nothing. So I don't know if that's feasible this year. If we're unable to get immediate funds from Commodity Credit Corporation, our next phase will be to look for supplemental appropriations. And we have strong congressional delegation in both states, and the Democrats are in the majority. Senator Merkley's on chair of Interior Appropriations for Bureau of Reclamation, and he's committed to this basin, and all of them are, and we see them all the time. So if the USDA funds don't show, we'll look for supplemental appropriations. We'll look for something in the Infrastructure Act. We'll do everything that we can. Congress is a hard thing to move around. And a lot of them don't know who we are, but we have really good friends in Washington in terms of the people you elected to represent you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm Jeff Boyd, and I farm in Tulelake, and I just have a couple observations. First, to any of the elected representatives here, or their staff, or their online, I appreciate your attendance. The simple answer is we need more water. If we're not going to get more water, we're going to need all kinds of other resources that you can help marshal to get us to our communities. This is not a good thing. The next observation I'd like to say is I very much appreciate you gentlemen being here and saying what you're saying and doing the work you do. I am extremely disappointed in the Bureau of Reclamation that nobody's here. I used to think the previous guy had no spine, and then there's nobody here today. And it's up to Ben DuVal to get up there and tell us there's no water? You shouldn't have to do that, Ben. The Bureau ought to take responsibility for some of their actions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. It's been weighing pretty heavy on me, and I think it's getting to a lot of people, and we're going to see people people start losing farms. People are going to get pissed off, and that's just natural reaction. We have been warned that people doing crazy stuff, acts of violence, it's not going to play well with this administration. I mean, the politics of the country right now, I want to do something, but it's not going to be productive, and I think it could hurt us in the long term. So we all have a right to protest, and when people are being put in this kind of position where you have no options, people are going to want to act out. And I just hope that we can keep it together as a community, that we can look to each other to help each other where we can. It seems kind of hopeless at times, but there's always a way to make it work, and let's just hope that we're all here next year. Does anybody have any more questions?
So, difficult question. The first question would be, what is your permit allow you to do? Where can that water go? What acres does it serve? If that water can be placed into the federal infrastructure and moved around, KID will assist in helping provide that. Does KID ask that you pump your wells in service to your neighbors? That's something you're going to need to discuss, and I need to discuss with our board to see if there is options we can do within the district, as there's no DRA program to offset those costs for you. I've discussed this previously with the KID board. We have not made a decision on what that action will be at this point.
Is there any other questions? Well, I wish we had some better news. I will say I want to thank all of our elected officials that have been working on this. We have some of them here today. We've been meeting with them, seems a lot lately. Thank you, Aaron, for coming. And we got to meet with Congressman LaMalfa the other day, and he and a lot of other people are doing everything they can to try and make this situation better for all of us. We all know it's gonna affect not just the farms, but every business on Main Street and even larger than that. So I wish we had some better news, but if there's no more questions, we'll go get some lunch. Thank you.
For those that are interested, the operations plan is over here on the table. I did run out of the bullet points, but everything